Is it possible a man's entire life could be dictated by the ghost of a doctor from ancient Greece? Seriously. Let's dive into a world where a guy named Geoffrey IV de Landry, heartbroken over his wife's death, decided the best way to raise his daughters was to write a book about perfect women. It sounds like a Hallmark movie, right? Wrong. This was medieval Europe, and perfect meant meticulously sculpted, rigorously controlled, and utterly dependent on male approval. Geoffrey's preface, penned in 1371, wasn't a heartfelt ode to his beloved. It was a strategic decree. He wanted his daughters to be honorable and advantageous, mirroring their mother's courtly carriage and demeanor. Basically, he was building a miniature version of her, hoping to recapture a lost paradise, and he wasn't alone. Across Europe, men, fathers, husbands, brothers, even distant relatives were engaged in this same project, shaping young girls into the ideal wives and mothers. But how did they do it? Let's rewind a few millennia, back to the mind of Hippocrates, the father of medicine. This guy, living over 2,400 years before Geoffrey, was obsessed with the human body. He believed it was governed by 4 humors: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile, and that illness resulted from an imbalance of these fluids. Now, this might sound a little weird, but it had profound implications for how people understood women. Hippocrates theorized that women were inherently weaker and more prone to imbalance than men. Their blood was thinner, their humors more volatile, and their constitutions less robust. He didn't exactly say women were inferior, but he certainly suggested they were more delicate, more easily disrupted, and therefore in need of careful management. Think of it like a finely tuned musical instrument. A man's body was a strong, resonant cello, while a woman's was a delicate flute, prone to cracking if handled too roughly. This idea wasn't just medical, it seeped into philosophy. Aristotle, a student of Hippocrates, built upon these theories, arguing that men were naturally suited for politics and warfare, active, rational, and courageous, while women were best suited for domesticity, passive, emotional, and nurturing. It's like he was saying that men were built for the battlefield, while women were destined for the hearth. It's a stark contrast, isn't it? And here's the kicker: Aristotle's ideas weren't just academic musings. They became the bedrock of Western thought for centuries. When medieval scholars rediscovered and translated the works of the ancients, they embraced these theories wholeheartedly. They didn't question them, they enshrined them as gospel. It was as if they were saying, look, this is just how things are. Men are naturally superior and women are naturally, well, different. Now let's fast forward to the Church Fathers, the influential theologians who shaped the religious landscape of medieval Europe. Augustine of Hippo 354 to 430 CE and Jerome ca. 347 to 420 CE weren't exactly fans of female intellect. They believed women were inherently more susceptible to temptation and sin, and therefore needed to be kept under the control of men. Augustine, in his City of God, argued that women were created to be subordinate to men, reflecting the divine order of the universe. Jerome, translating the Bible into Latin, often used derogatory terms for women, portraying them as deceitful and prone to infidelity. These weren't isolated opinions, they became deeply ingrained in Christian theology. The Church reinforced the idea that a woman's primary role was to be a wife and mother, and that her value lay in her ability to bear children and manage the household. It was a system that prioritized male authority and reinforced the notion that women were inherently weaker and less rational. But wait, there's more. As the medieval period progressed, a whole host of scholars and thinkers contributed to this evolving worldview. Albertus Magnus, a Dominican friar and Aristotle's most famous student, further solidified the connection between ancient philosophy and Christian theology. He argued that women were created to be inferior to men, both physically and intellectually. Then came Thomas Aquinas, 1225 to 1274 CE, a hugely influential theologian and philosopher who synthesized Aristotelian thought with Christian doctrine. Aquinas essentially codified the existing beliefs about women, arguing that they were naturally suited for domestic life and that their role was to support and obey their husbands. He didn't explicitly say women were less intelligent, but he did suggest that their intellect was less developed than men's. It's like a domino effect, isn't it? Each scholar built upon the ideas of the previous one, creating a complex and interconnected web of beliefs that shaped the way people understood women. Let's not forget Christine de Pizan, ca. 1364–1430, a brilliant writer and scholar who dared to challenge these prevailing attitudes. She wrote a series of books defending the rights and capabilities of women, arguing that they were just as intelligent and capable as men. Her most famous work, The Book of the City of Ladies, was a virtual encyclopedia of female accomplishments, showcasing the contributions of women throughout history. But even Christine de Pizan faced an uphill battle. Her work was often dismissed as radical or heretical, and her voice was largely drowned out by the chorus of male voices. She was a lone voice in a room full of men, arguing against a deeply entrenched system of beliefs. Now back to Geoffrey IV de Landry and his daughters. He wasn't alone in his desire to mold young girls into the ideal wife. Across medieval Europe, wealthy families employed tutors, nurses, and even specially trained feminizers to shape their daughters' character and behavior. These women were taught to be graceful, demure, and obedient, to possess a pleasing appearance, and to be skilled in the arts of needlework, music, and conversation. It was a relentless process of refinement, designed to transform a young girl into a polished and desirable wife. The goal wasn't to educate them, but to cultivate their desirability. Think of it like a sculptor working with clay. The sculptor's goal wasn't to create a masterpiece of intellect, but a beautiful form that would please the eye. And what did that beautiful form look like? Well, let's talk about beauty. Medieval notions of female attractiveness were incredibly specific and often contradictory. Women were expected to be fair-skinned, with blonde or reddish hair, blue or green eyes, and a delicate, almost ethereal appearance. They were also expected to be slender and graceful, with a small waist and full breasts, but it wasn't just about physical appearance. Women were also expected to possess certain virtues: piety, modesty, and obedience. They were supposed to be gentle, compassionate, and patient, and to be skilled in managing the household and caring for their families. It was a demanding set of expectations, and one that placed immense pressure on women. They were constantly being judged and evaluated, not for their intelligence or accomplishments, but for their appearance and their ability to fulfill their prescribed roles. Imagine being told from the moment you could understand that your worth was determined by your beauty and your ability to please men. It's a suffocating thought, isn't it? So what does all this tell us? It tells us that the attitudes we have about women today, the expectations we place on them, the judgments we make about them are not necessarily innate or natural. They are in fact products of a long and complex history. They are echoes of ancient ideas, reinforced by medieval thinkers and perpetuated through centuries of social and cultural norms. Geoffrey IV de Landry's daughters weren't simply following a traditional path. They were participating in a centuries-long project of shaping women into a particular ideal. And that ideal, as we've seen, was one that prioritized beauty, obedience, and domesticity, a vision of womanhood that has had a profound and lasting impact on our world. But here's the important thing: recognizing this history doesn't mean accepting it. It means understanding where we come from so we can choose a different path. It means challenging the assumptions that have shaped our perceptions of women and creating a world where women are valued for their intelligence, their accomplishments, and their unique contributions to society. And it all started with a heartbroken archdeacon and a desire to recreate a lost paradise. Now let's ask ourselves, if we could travel back in time and have a conversation with Geoffrey IV de Landry, what would we tell him? Would we urge him to let his daughters be themselves, to pursue their own passions, to defy the expectations of their time? Or would we simply tell him that he was doing his best, given the constraints of his world? And finally, let's consider this. If we can dismantle the deeply ingrained beliefs about women that shaped medieval Europe, what does that say about our own society today? Are we truly free from the shackles of the past, or are we simply repeating the same patterns, albeit with a slightly more sophisticated veneer?